And we start tonight with breaking news. It looks like special counsel Jack Smith is not done trying with those Trump indictments. A short time ago, NBC News confirmed that Smith has filed a superseding indictment in the election interference case against the former president. And you're going to be seeing that headline a lot over the next day or so. But here's what it really means. This indictment still charges Trump with the same 4 counts he was originally hit with last August. But in some cases, evidence has been whittled down in response to a recent Supreme Court ruling. For more on what's new here, we have NBC News senior legal correspondent Laura Jarrett.
Tonight, the Justice Department trying to breathe new life into the criminal case against former President Trump for trying to reverse the last election as he runs for re-election. The GOP nominee now facing a superseding indictment in Washington, D.C., with the same core charges but stripped away of some of the alleged acts the Supreme Court has said are off limits and immune from prosecution. Prosecutors had accused Mr. Trump of a sweeping plot to stay in office, leaning on his DOJ, VP, and state officials to help him overturn the election results, all culminating in the violent attack on the Capitol on January 6.
My office will seek a speedy trial so that our evidence can be tested in court.
But the case was marred in appeals and delays, the Supreme Court's conservative majority dealing the real blow in July, finding Mr. Trump cannot be prosecuted for any official acts as president, sending the case back to the lower court to parse out what he can be prosecuted for, if anything.
You're not going to do anything if you don't have immunity, because otherwise you're going to be prosecuted after you leave office.
The former president pled not guilty to all charges, and tonight, a source familiar with his legal strategy tells NBC News he will do the same for this revised indictment, as his defense believes it includes the same fatal flaws, including Mr. Trump's pressure on his former VP, his new running mate pouncing on that.
I think it's clearly an effort to try to do more election interference from Jack Smith. He should be ashamed of himself, and it's one of the reasons why we have to win, because he should not be anywhere near power.
Laura Jarrett, thank you. Let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalas to talk about what's going on here. So, Danny, you hear whittling down evidence. Does that make the case any weaker?
No, not at all. But first, I'd say that most of the time when a defense attorney like me hears there's a superseding indictment, you feel a spear through your chest, because normally what that means is the government has heaped on new allegations, new counts. They've discovered new evidence against you. A superseding indictment is generally bad news for a defendant. In this case, it's sort of just the same news, the same counts. All the DOJ, or excuse me, all Jack Smith's team has done is take a look at the indictment and say, what do we need to remove so we don't get into trouble with this immunity decision? Case in point being the DOJ allegations, the allegations that Donald Trump tried to subvert the DOJ or enlist their aid in subverting the election. And you will note that the person who was identified as being Jeffrey Bossert Clark is now magically gone from most of this document. And that's because the Supreme Court said outright all of this stuff about meeting with the DOJ and trying to overturn the election. Not only is he immune, that's evidence that doesn't come in. So DOJ is whittling down their indictment, but it's all the exact same counts. He gets convicted of those same counts. It doesn't matter one iota for sentencing purposes. He was going to get sent to the moon before this superseding indictment. He'll get sent to the moon after this superseding indictment if he's convicted.
And now it's the question of when this all happens or doesn't happen. This case was pushed back till after the election, but does this new superseding indictment move the case up at all in the calendar?
Not in any way that really matters. The magic events are the election. If Donald Trump is elected, then he will make this federal case and the other federal case in Florida, which is technically gone now. But I mean, assuming maybe it's back on the docket for some reason, the federal cases will vanish if Donald Trump is elected. He cannot make the state court cases disappear. The federal ones will go away. So first, he has to get elected. It really doesn't matter either way. If he doesn't get elected and this federal case moves forward, he's in big trouble. Pre-superseding indictment, post-superseding indictment. His best chance is to make the same argument that immunity, the Supreme Court's immunity decision, prevents the D.C. court from, or the prosecutors there, from prosecuting him and hope that that works, or try the same argument that Jack Smith was unlawfully appointed. But either way, it's all about Trump getting elected. The timeline here really doesn't make that much of a difference.
Got it. Danny Savalos, thank you. And in some other legal news, this time on the West Coast here, former Real Housewives of Beverly Hills husband and one-time legal titan lawyer Tom Girardi has been found guilty of embezzling more than $15 million from his former clients. Now, the 85-year-old is the estranged husband of the Real Housewives star Erica Jane, and his pollution case against a California utility inspired the movie Erin Brockovich. He has been on trial for 4 counts of wire fraud and was found guilty on all 4. The U.S. Attorney's Office says he also diverted over $25 million to pay for Jane's entertainment career. He pled not guilty in Los Angeles last year, and his sentencing is scheduled for December 6th. Meanwhile, one of the hottest days of this summer is happening just a few weeks from fall, with record-breaking temperatures affecting some 75 million people from St. Louis to Atlanta, D.C. to Chicago. Chicago's O'Hare Airport hit 99 degrees today, breaking a 51-year-old record. The humidity made things even worse. The heat index well into triple-digit territory, and people were headed to Lake Michigan to stay cool as we put the cap on one of the hottest summers on record.
Probably the hottest summer we've had in a while.
See me sweating? You have to stay hydrated.
Did it make you miss winter a little bit, or?
No.
Nope, we don't miss winter either. NBC's Shaquille Brewster is in Chicago. Shaq, it felt like 114 there today. I mean, were you following that lady's advice, like staying hydrated? What did it feel like?
I have been. I've had my water nearby. I have a light shirt on right now. I've been going back into the air conditioning between all of these live reports. So I've been listening to what officials have been telling us. And, you know, you look at the temperature, and we've seen it go throughout the mid-90s. We're closer to the lake here downtown, so it's a little bit cooler than what many others are dealing with, especially when you look at O'Hare. But when you factor in this humidity, the stickiness in the air, that's when it feels like those triple-digit temperatures. It hit 115 degrees in terms of that feel-like temperature today. And, you know, that makes today Chicago's hottest day of the year. So it's not just me. You've seen a lot of people taking the advice of officials, taking advantage of those cooling centers and dipping in the lake, taking a ride along the river when they got the opportunity to do so.
And Shaq, I know yesterday was the first day of school in Chicago, so how did CPS handle all the heat?
Yeah, they did a few different things. I mean, for one, CPS, they put out statements saying that all classrooms and all buildings have air conditioning, and they said that there were a couple of issues, a few dozen rooms that did not have AC, and they brought in portable air conditioning units or made adjustments to make sure that the students were safe. But we also know that they canceled all outdoor athletic activities today. So think about that football practice or marching band practice. They either canceled it or moved those inside. Those are going to be allowed to resume tomorrow. So you've been seeing those modifications. I think the bottom line is they want to keep people inside. So we know in elementary schools, they moved the recess and physical education. They moved that inside as well. They want to make sure that people can stay inside, enjoy that air conditioning as this heat wave continues.
And that heat wave is moving east, and I know that some schools are shutting down in places like Pittsburgh, Philly. What are they doing there?
Yes, you know, it's less so that they're just completely shutting down, but you have dozens of schools having those early dismissals. And I think at least one school in the Chicago area did have an early dismissal today because of that heat. We know it gets hot in that middle of the day. That's what they're trying to avoid, having so many students inside those hot buildings around that time. But Gadi, you know, it's not just the heat that folks are worried about here in Chicago, as we also had an excessive heat alert. There's now thunderstorm warnings that are in effect for as we get into the evening. So that's the threat of dangerous winds, of potential hail. It's something that we saw on the East Coast just yesterday. We saw really dramatic scenes of hail in Massachusetts and Connecticut. So it's a lot of different weather conditions that folks are dealing with, of course, trying to stay safe throughout all of them, Gadi.
Pretty wild end of summer. Shaq Brewster, thank you. An NBC News meteorologist Bill Cairns joins us now. Bill, how long is this heat going to last?
Not long for some, Gadi. We have to congratulate our friends in Chicago and like Milwaukee, all the way through the Quad Cities, because they made it through today. And then tomorrow, the relief begins to come in. And who knows? It may not be this hot again until next summer. It is still blistering hot, though. I mean, it's not like it's cooled off yet. We're still seeing many areas well over 100 for the feels-like temperature. And earlier today in Chicago, it felt like 115, and the temperature was close to 100. That was the hottest day by far this year in Chicago. And Cleveland, by the way, was also the hottest day of the year, too. So even now, we still got a few spots, 111, 113 in Peru. So those are pretty hefty numbers as the sun is setting. It's going to make for a very uncomfortable evening. Maybe if you get lucky, a thunderstorm cools you off. That is, if it's not going to be severe. And as we go through tonight, some of these will be dropped. But as of now, still 67 million people included in heat advisories or excessive heat warnings. This area in the mid-Atlantic to New York, that's for tomorrow. The heat slides to the east, near 100 from areas like Chattanooga, Nashville, Memphis, Charleston. D.C. could tie a record high or break it at 100 degrees. It won't be a record in New York City, but 95 is possible. And then as we head towards the holiday weekend, a lot of areas to the north cool off a lot. I mean, look at Kansas City, only 79 on Sunday, 79 in Chicago, New York in the upper 70s to low 80s. Still very warm in the south, but at least it's not going to be that really intense heat, Gadi.
And we're also hearing it might bring some nasty storms with it, right?
Yeah, isolated severe storms. It's just so hot that it's going to just, we're going to get some sparks out there, but it doesn't look to be widespread. Even this evening, we're already watching some really strong storms around Toledo, Ohio. These will drift towards Cleveland as we go throughout the next couple hours. These severe thunderstorm watches are up till 11 o'clock around Chicago and midnight here for the lakeshore there just south of Lake Erie. And as far as tomorrow goes, then we take the severe threat across areas of Pennsylvania and Ohio and eventually into the I-95 corridor. New York City has dropped out of that, so that's good news for the evening rush hour tomorrow there. But to the south, we could have some problems. The timing, you notice there's 2 p.m., 4 p.m. This is the storms we'll be talking about. So from about Washington, D.C., especially the Baltimore area up to Philadelphia, and then another batch of storms in areas of Indiana. Even into Thursday, it looks like this cold front's going to kind of linger, and we're going to have hit-and-miss showers and storms in the mid-Atlantic. It shouldn't be as severe on Thursday, but tomorrow the fear is going to be gusty winds, maybe some isolated strong hail. And as we head towards the getaway day on Friday for the holiday weekend, no problems in the west, and I hope you enjoyed it when it was relatively cool, because it is going to get very hot as we go through the holiday weekend and right through next week, Gadi. We're going to be talking about record highs in many areas, and of course, we're going to bring back that fire threat too as we stay very dry and hot in the west all through the beginning of September. And as you know, that gets to be the peak of the fire season too.
Yeah, Bill Cairns, thank you so much. And as we talk more about summer, we're turning now to a bumper year for mosquitoes. And in some parts of the country, mosquito bites are bringing new fears of deadly disease. Now, health officials say at least one person has died in New Hampshire from EEE, or Eastern Equine Encephalitis, this mosquito-borne virus. And just a few weeks ago, another person died from the West Nile virus in Texas. For more on who's at risk, here's NBC News correspondent Rachel Ellis.
As New York sprays for mosquitoes carrying dangerous viruses like Eastern Equine Encephalitis, also called EEE, concern is spreading nationwide. Cases popping up in Massachusetts, Vermont, New Jersey, Wisconsin, and tonight, New Hampshire. New Hampshire health officials say one adult resident died of EEE after being hospitalized for severe nervous system disease. It's New Hampshire's first human case of the virus in a decade. The West Nile virus is a threat, too. 33 states have reported 289 cases of West Nile.
This is worrisome and discouraging.
Epidemiologist and infectious disease specialist Dr. Richard Ellison says EEE virus is especially troubling.
We have 30 to 40% of the patients who get this and become sick with it, will die from it.
Is there any age group that's particularly vulnerable to these viruses?
The very young and the very old are the ones who have the worst outcome.
Officials nationwide are taking action, spraying, testing to identify mosquito breeding areas.
I'm glad that they're doing something proactive about it.
Safety precautions include wearing long sleeves and pants, using insect repellent, and getting rid of standing water. Take extra care during dusk and dawn, officials say. That's when mosquitoes are most active. Rachel Ellis, NBC News, New York.
And let's bring in infectious disease expert and senior scholar at the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, Dr. Amish Adalja. Doctor, thanks so much for being with us. So let's just back up for a quick second here. What is Eastern equine encephalitis, or EEE, and how does it kill somebody? I mean, those stats, 30, 40%, they sound terrifying. Why is the alarm being raised now?
Well, this is a virus that's been around for decades, and every year it causes about a dozen cases of infection in the United States. And what's characteristic about it is that if you get sick with it, 30 to 40% of those individuals are going to go on and die. And they die because this infects their brain. That's what the word encephalitis means. And those who survive are often left with major disability. So anytime this appears in a given area, there's a lot of alarm bells that ring. There's a lot of mitigation efforts that get put into place in terms of trying to control mosquito populations, and a lot of public awareness, because this is an infection you do not want to get.
Oh, it sounds so terrifying. And we've got EEE and West Nile circulating in different parts of the United States. The United States is huge, right? But like, I have a ton of mosquito bites on my legs right now. And you watch this and you're like, okay, we're out here in California. But realistically, like, can all of this travel from state to state?
Yes, because mosquitoes can travel from state to state, and the mosquitoes that cause these infections aren't just restricted to one state. They don't really stop at a state border. They don't stop at national borders. So there are many parts of the United States that are prone for certain mosquito disease. Now, there are different mosquitoes that transmit West Nile versus Eastern equine. Eastern equine tends to be the New England states or some of the states that are on the Gulf Coast. But West Nile is basically endemic in all of the 48 lower states. So this is something that everybody has to think about, and it's the mosquitoes that can be anywhere and can bite anybody, but most people, it's important to remember, aren't going to get sick. It's a small percentage that get sick after the mosquito bite, but those who do get sick with West Nile or with Eastern equine can have a serious outcome.
And with EEE, is there a possibility that this becomes endemic across the country?
Probably not, because it's really restricted to where the requisite mosquitoes are, and Eastern equine is a virus that has a cycle between birds and mosquitoes, so it really stays in those kind of states. We don't really see that spread. There are other encephalitis viruses on the West Coast, like there's a whole bunch of California encephalitis viruses, including Western equine encephalitis. So they're each kind of part of the country has different encephalitis viruses related to the mosquitoes and the birds that are their natural reservoir.
Great. That is terrifying news. And then, you know, when we talk about remediation, you know, you see some of the spraying that's going on in New York and Massachusetts. And anytime you see like these clouds being sprayed, you got to wonder, like, how effective is it? And then are there any risks from the spraying itself, like with the video that we're seeing right there?
There are no major risks to humans from that spraying. Some of that spraying is going to have an impact in killing mosquitoes, but what really works is going into areas where there's standing water. So that could mean the sandbox in your yard or the bird bath, and making sure you don't have breeding sites on your own property or in your community. That's what really makes a difference when it comes to controlling mosquito populations. And the other point is that these vector control activities cost money, and oftentimes municipalities, states, they don't really fund their vector control programs very robustly, and then you kind of get these kind of boom and bust cycles where they need resources there and they don't necessarily have them. So I think that's also one of the lessons, is we have to be vigilant about mosquito-borne illnesses all the time.
Doctor, I will be on the hunt for any standing water at my house as soon as I get home tonight. Can't thank you enough. Thank you.
Thanks.
And don't go anywhere. We are just getting started. Up next, a hostage held in Gaza is freed after 346 days. The details of his rescue are coming up after the break. Plus, fire officials in California are up in their game big time here with this massive air tanker that's taken off this week. NBC's David Noriega has the details. And later this hour, some police are now using AI to help write up reports. But will those hold up in court? NBC legal correspondent Angela Sinandela is breaking all of that down in tonight's Future of Everything, so stay tuned. Hey there, welcome back, and here are some other headlines we're watching tonight. A student at Rice University was shot and killed in an apparent murder-suicide. Now, this happened in Houston yesterday afternoon. The woman was shot in her dorm room, and the suspect, who she was dating, was also found dead nearby. Police say the suspect left a note signaling some sort of problem with their relationship. And a U.S. appeals court is clearing the way for Florida to ban transgender care for minors, reversing a lower court ruling last month that prevented the ban from taking effect. The new law blocks trans kids from receiving puberty blockers and other treatments, even if their parents give permission. And the defense team in the Arizona fake electors case is arguing charges should be dropped. Hearing will stretch into the third day, where a judge is considering requests from around a dozen of the defendants to dismiss. They were all indicted in April on charges of fraud and conspiracy, accused of trying to overturn the outcome of the 2020 presidential race in Arizona. And a San Diego police officer was killed during a high-speed chase, and another officer has been seriously hurt. The driver of the car police were chasing was also killed. Now, this happened last night, and two other officers were driving together in the same car when the suspect's car slammed onto the side of theirs. And Oasis is getting the band back together. Brothers Noel and Liam Gallagher announced today the reunion tour will start, with the first leg scheduled for next July, starting with a bunch of shows in the UK and Ireland. The band split up back in 2009 after songwriter Noel refused to continue working with frontman Liam. And tonight, freedom for one hostage held captive in Gaza. Israeli forces say they rescued the 52-year-old man in a, quote, complex military mission. That's more than 10 months after he was initially taken by Hamas. And NBC News correspondent Danielle Hamanjian has more.
Well, his name is Farhan al-Qadi, 52 years old. He's the 8th hostage to be found alive, the first one to be found in a tunnel. He's an Arab Israeli from the Bedouin community in southern Israel, predominantly Muslim community. He was working as a guard outside Kibbutz Megen on October 7th when he was taken hostage. Now, the IDF isn't saying a whole lot about what unfolded during this operation, but a senior military official here telling NBC News that troops were operating in a complex underground system where hostages were suspected of being held, along with Hamas fighters and explosives. And this official goes on to say that lessons from previous events were learned, presumably making reference here to the tragic shooting of 3 hostages back in December. Now, this appears to be a different set of circumstances than the operation that saved Noah Argamani and the 3 other hostages also back in June. He was found alone. He seems to be in stable condition, will be screened by doctors, but he has been reunited with his family. Now, what has been the case here every time a hostage has come back home is that the family members of the other hostages still waiting will want to know if he has any information regarding the condition or the whereabouts of their loved ones. According to the IDF, there are now 108 hostages left in the Gaza Strip. 2 of them have been held since 2014, and a third of them are presumed dead.
Danielle, thank you. Now to a cell phone video drawing some scrutiny for the Canton, Ohio Police Department. It shows an officer kicking a man who is kneeling as he appears to comply with their commands. Now, the man's lawyer says his client had to go to the hospital because of that incident, and a warning. Some of the images in this report are disturbing. NBC's Valerie Castro has more.
Tonight, outrage over this jaw-dropping video of an Ohio police officer kicking a kneeling man who appeared to be complying with their orders.
Oh! That cop still got out the car, ran to him, and drop-kicked him. Who does that? If I were to do that to you or anybody else, I'd be in jail.
Members of the public heated at a city council meeting, calling out what they say is a pattern of bad behavior by Canton police, including the recent death of Frank Tyson in their custody. Tyson was arrested after police say he ran from the scene of a car crash in April. Body camera video capturing an officer kneeling on his back while Tyson tells officers, "I can't breathe."
I can't breathe.
Tyson later seen motionless and unresponsive on the floor while still in handcuffs. The county coroner ruling his death a homicide. The 2 officers involved remain on paid administrative leave as the Ohio Attorney General reviews the case.
It's really hard to imagine that I represent 6 men, 3 dead and 3 living since 2022, January 1, that have been subjected to force, dog bite attacks, in this case getting kicked in the head.
Attorney Bobby DiCello represents both Tyson's family and 21-year-old Jamir McElroy, the man seen kicked on camera. Police say he was part of a group reportedly arguing at this apartment complex over the weekend. Police say 2 pistols were recovered at the scene, and a backpack containing marijuana, cash, and scales were found in a nearby vehicle. McElroy was charged with resisting arrest following the incident. His lawyer says he was not part of the group police were called to investigate and that he did not resist.
The video demonstrates unequivocally that he's on his knees, his hands are in the air, and then he's kicked in the head.
DiCello says his client, who was hospitalized, is still dealing with the aftermath.
Jameer is traumatized. He received a concussion from what happened. He has swelling in his neck muscles and into his face, up to the jaw area.
The Canton police chief saying in a statement, officers ordered the suspects to the ground and they appeared to be complying when Officer Brandon Momarov kicked Jameer McElroy in the chest, adding officers using force outside the parameters of our training, policy, and principles will be held accountable.
I think it's a failure of leadership on every level. The leadership of the city needs to do something about it. They need to take swift and decisive action. They absolutely must terminate that officer.
Valerie Castro, thank you. Coming up, a deadly explosion at a Delta Airlines facility in Atlanta today. More details on that in just a moment. But first, you got to see this. This right here, wait for it. No, this is not going to be video out of Colorado or Vermont. That is snowfall in August here in California. That clip was recorded by a member of the Madera County Sheriff's Office up in the Sierra Nevada mountains, and it happened on Friday night, and snow was also recorded on the summit of Mammoth Mountain on Saturday. Guess it's never too early for some winter weather. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back. And here are some of the stories happening out west that we're following right now. A 14-year-old mom and her 3-week-old baby with a heart condition are missing in East Los Angeles. They were last seen Sunday night and may be headed to the high desert. The family is pleading for help as police continue to search to find them. And surveillance video shows burglars stealing thousands of dollars worth of sports cards from a memorabilia store in just 45 seconds. This is a video right here. It shows them breaking through the glass door early Monday morning and getting away with nearly $20,000 in cards. Rockland police are investigating as the store manager is thanking the community for their support and vowing to bounce back as soon as possible. And an autonomous Waymo car was caught driving into oncoming traffic near Arizona State University. 2 recent grads shot that video, which has now gone viral, and Waymo says the car corrected itself, but safety concerns for those self-driving cars continue to grow. And in late June, the Supreme Court gave cities and states more power to take action in cleaning up homeless encampments. And now that issue has hit a fever pitch here in California. This state is home to nearly 30% of the nation's homeless, which last year was about 181,000 people living on the streets or in shelters. And now cities across California are trying a slew of different ways to respond to the ruling. And CNBC's Kate Rogers is here with more. Kate?
Encampments have become one of the most prominent visual symbols of California's challenges in tackling its housing issue. In response to that ruling, Governor Gavin Newsom cheered the court's clarity on actions that can be legally taken and urged local governments to develop policies to, quote, address encampments with compassion, care, and urgency. The state has invested $27 billion to address the homelessness crisis, including $1 billion in encampment resolution funds since he took office in 2019. Here in San Francisco, Mayor London Breed, who is facing a tough re-election this fall, has taken a more aggressive approach to clearing encampments. That approach has been met with some criticism from homelessness advocates.
What it means for homeless people, though, is this is a real kick in the gut because they have very few protections.
Breed has admitted the issue cannot be resolved without building more affordable housing. Clearing the encampments also causes tension in some communities in the state as some move just blocks away and unhoused may refuse services offered to them. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass said the ruling, quote, must not be used as an excuse for cities across the country to attempt to arrest their way out of this problem or hide the homelessness crisis in neighboring cities or in jail. There are economic ripple effects to the affordable housing shortage and homelessness challenges faced not only in California, but nationwide. The National Alliance to End Homelessness found in 2017 that a chronically homeless person costs the taxpayer an average of more than $35,000 per year, and those costs are reduced by an average of nearly half when individuals are placed in supportive housing. For CNBC Business News, I'm Kate Rogers in San Francisco.
And 2 people are dead and another is hurt after a tire exploded at a Delta tire and brake facility near Atlanta's airport. Now, details are still coming in, but Delta says that no aircraft were involved in that incident. Let's bring in NBC News correspondent Priya Sridhar with the latest from Atlanta. Priya, thanks so much for joining us. What else do we know about what happened here, and how's a surviving victim doing right now?
Hey, Gadi, an absolutely horrific tragedy happening early this morning here at the Atlanta airport. We have been in communication with the Delta spokesperson throughout the day, and they are telling us that those maintenance workers who were working on that tire were taking apart wheel components, and that, as you mentioned, this tire was not attached to an aircraft at the time the accident occurred. This all happened in a tire repair shop that's close to Atlanta's international terminal, but it's not attached to the airport in any way. Now, there's been a lot of conflicting information as to whether or not we can determine that this was an actual explosion. Delta is saying that at this point they don't know if it was an explosion, but a union that's representing airline workers across North America extended their condolences to the victims' families, and they cited reports that talked about a tire explosion. We also read an incident report from Atlanta's Fire and Rescue Department that responded to this incident, and they described people, witnesses, other Delta employees who saw what happened, describing it as an explosion. But of course, there are a lot of questions right now, Gadi, and of course, I know that the families of the victims are going to want answers, and Delta also will be looking into exactly how this could have happened.
And Priya, the union is also calling for an investigation here. So what does an investigation into something like this look like?
Yeah, so Delta has said that they do plan to investigate exactly what went wrong here. And the FAA has also said that they are in communication with Delta about the accident. One of the things that sort of complicates this when it comes to which regulatory body or agency would take the lead on an investigation like this is, as we mentioned, this tire in this accident had nothing to do exactly with an aircraft because the tire wasn't on the aircraft when it happened. So if anything, it's more like an OSHA or a workplace accident, more so than something that the FAA themselves would be directly involved in, Gadi.
Priya, important detail there. Thank you so much. And some news tonight when it comes to the price of some of those popular weight loss drugs. One company, Eli Lilly, is slashing prices for at least one of their treatments. But why now? NBC News correspondent Stephanie Goss takes that question to their company's CEO.
Zepbound is getting a price cut. Eli Lilly announcing it will now offer low-dosage versions of the weight loss drug in vials with syringes, instead of auto-injector pens, which cost more than $1,000 a month. Now, patients with a prescription who are not covered by insurance will be able to buy a month's supply of the 2.5 milligram dose for $399 and the 5 milligram dose for $549 directly from Eli Lilly.
We've been frustrated. We can't meet the incredible demand for this medicine, and this is a way we can do that more quickly. But also, we're trying to meet the needs of patients who don't have insurance coverage.
But to be clear, this won't help people who are on higher doses of Zepbound.
Well, if they have coverage in their insurance, there's no change for them. If they don't have coverage with their insurance, they could talk to their doctor about moving to the 5 milligram dose.
Former police officer John Cattler is one of those patients, paying $1,100 a month.
That's a lot of money a month. How are you able to do it?
I'm putting it on credit cards, honestly.
You're going into debt to take this medication.
I am, yes.
His doctor wants him on a higher dose starting next month. The new, cheaper version won't help him.
It's a step in the right direction, but I still have a lot of questions that if they can sell it for less, why don't they?
Eli Lilly's announcement comes as compounding pharmacies are dispensing weight loss drugs they say are essentially a copy of Zepbound, a cheaper option for patients. State-licensed facilities like this one on Long Island are able to legally produce them because the FDA has Zepbound on a shortage list. Some healthcare providers are recommending those versions for their patients as long as they come from a trusted source, creating competition. Eli Lilly strongly opposes the practice.
They're not inspected by the FDA. They're not approved by the FDA. In addition to that, we invent the product. I mean, that's why there's a premium for the real thing made by Lilly.
Stephanie Gosk, thank you. And here in California, we are no strangers to wildfires, but starting this week, a powerful new tool will be available to help fight them. We are talking about a C-130 Hercules air tanker. And wait till you see this thing. NBC News correspondent David Noriega has that story.
California is using a game-changing new tool in its fight against wildfires. The state's fire protection agency, CAL FIRE, now the first in the nation to deploy its own C-130 Hercules air tankers to support firefighters on the ground and protect communities under threat.
What's so great about them is just the amount of retardant they can carry, the range, the speed of these airplanes is so much more than the tankers we have now. It's just going to bolster our firefighting efforts that much more.
The C-130 model has the ability to hold 4,000 gallons of fire retardant, more than 3 times the capacity of any other aircraft in CAL FIRE's fleet, and has the greatest range. The planes were originally used by the U.S. Coast Guard, but in December 2023, Congress passed legislation transferring 7 of them from the federal government to California. The first of those, stationed just outside of Sacramento after months of modifications, now ready for action.
We are going to have 5 strategically placed throughout California so that they can get to any part of California within 20 minutes.
Officials also say the new technology could be a critical boost for rescue missions. Welcome news for the thousands of California residents shaken by wildfire season, with 830,000 acres burned this year so far. More than half of that in the Park Fire that's been blazing since July, the state's 4th largest wildfire on record.
I saw flames at one point.
Victoria Peters, who lives in the mountain community of Lake Elsinore, says the aircraft could be a huge help for her neighbors.
We have a lot of seniors here that won't get out. So you arrange who's going to take care of her, who's going to take care of the cats, who's going to get this one.
Officials say the deployment of these planes is just one step in an overall plan to better protect Californians. David Noriega, NBC News.
Fascinating story, David. Thank you. Still ahead, we're going to tell you how Afghani refugees are keeping music and tradition from their homeland alive. You're going to want to hear this next story, so stay tuned. Hey, welcome back. Let's take a quick look around the world. Separate Russian attacks have killed at least 6 people in Ukraine, according to officials in Kyiv. Now, the drone attacks wiped out a hotel in central Ukraine, killing 3 people. 3 others were killed in the southeastern city of Zaporizhzhia. President Volodymyr Zelensky says Ukraine will retaliate against Russia for today's deadly attacks. And days of heavy rain in Sudan have caused a dam there to collapse, flooding entire communities. This happened near the Red Sea on Sunday. Right now, officials say they don't know how many people have been killed, but early reports put the number as high as 30. The disaster has only made things worse for an area already suffering from war and famine. And National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan pays a visit to China. The goal of that visit seems to be to clear up any misconceptions between the two superpowers. But Sullivan's 3-day visit will also touch on some prickly issues like Taiwan and Russia. And it's all happening just months before a new U.S. administration takes office. And Italian prosecutors have confirmed they have opened up an investigation into the captain of the super yacht that sank off the coast of Italy last week. 7 people were killed, including tech billionaire Michael Lynch and his teenage daughter. The captain is under investigation for potential manslaughter charges. Italian investigators are still trying to piece together exactly what happened. And some pretty shocking news coming out of Afghanistan, where women can no longer show their face or even speak in public under Taliban rule. Now, it's the latest in a long list of laws that strip Afghani people of freedoms like music, which can also no longer be played there. But thousands of miles away, some young refugees are keeping the music of Afghanistan alive. And NBC News international correspondent Richard Engel has their story.
In the city of Braga, known as the Rome of Portugal, where tradition and history run deep, members of the Afghan Youth Orchestra are keeping their country's rich musical traditions alive. Because in Afghanistan now, this is a crime. 3 years ago, as U.S. troops left Afghanistan, the Taliban seized power.
It was like we were dead.
You felt like you were dead?
Yes, of course.
For cousins Farida and Zora Ahmadi, it was a threat to their very existence. They were students at Afghanistan's National Institute of Music, Established in 2010 in Kabul, the school was a direct challenge to the Taliban's extremism. For years, the group tried to silence them, even dispatching a suicide bomber to a performance. So when the Taliban returned as rulers, the music stopped. The school's director, Dr. Ahmed Sarmast, orchestrated a miracle, a mass evacuation of students and staff.
It's an opportunity for our students to dream once again.
Today, the school and orchestra live on in Portugal, and their sacrifices are being recognized with an invitation to play Carnegie Hall. It was bittersweet for Zora.
We were happy and sad at the same time.
Sad for those left behind in Afghanistan, where music remains banned and girls are not allowed more than a 6th grade education. The orchestra is fighting back with instruments. This August, they made it to New York City.
Welcome to Carnegie Hall. No one can silence us.
Each concert is a protest. Each note is a protest.
Bringing them one step closer, perhaps, to returning music and hope to their homeland. Richard Engel, NBC News.
Before we go, it is time for the future of everything. And tonight, we're seeing how AI could be helping police write up their reports. Some say it'll save time, keep more cops on the streets, but will those reports hold up in court? That's coming up next. And we've got some good news for you tonight. The story behind these hugs and some surprises that brought some life-changing news for these athletes right here. Don't go anywhere. And tonight in the future of everything, from the makers of police tasers and body cams comes the newest tech tool for law enforcement, police reports written with the help of AI. That's right. Some police departments around the country are turning to artificial intelligence to generate crime reports. Now, the company behind the tech says the AI uses the sound and radio chatter picked up by body cam microphones to spit out a first draft of a report in as little as 8 seconds. And it's proven to be pretty popular.
Writing police reports is something officers hate to do, but it consumes about half of their day. So they sign up to be a cop, but they end up as a data entry clerk, and we're cutting that time about in half.
All right, so what could go wrong? Well, some legal experts are questioning the benefits and potential harms when it comes to the legal side of things. There's hallucinations and false information chatbots that have been known to generate. And also what happens when a police officer is asked under oath about AI-generated police reports. So let's get some answers from our legal scholar, our human legal scholar, NBC News legal analyst, Angela Sinandela. Angie, thanks so much for being with us. Will something that's generated by AI in a police report ever be used in court?
So, Gadi, I actually think so. I definitely think that this is the future. And that is because if you look at what a police report is and what AI is being used for, it's not really being used for opinion or judgment or, for example, for recommending charges. It really seems to be almost purely at this point a transcripting tool, transcribing audio into text, and then perhaps maybe making a few jumps from there. But in the same way that in any industry that uses AI, the human is ultimately responsible. It's really just going to come down to whether or not the human involved is really overlooking it all and making sure there are no errors.
It's really fascinating. I mean, we're watching it write a report there, and if you've read a lot of police reports, it's almost formulaic. Like, a lot of it almost looks like a template. But when it does come to hallucinations and errors, could like a savvy defense attorney theoretically use that to paint like this picture of an investigation of mistakes?
Yes, absolutely. And I also think, though, that this is a very popular defense attorney argument that the investigation was shoddy, the police report is shoddy, so as a result, there should be an acquittal. So it's definitely going to come down to how accurate it is. That's literally going to be 100% of this. Now, in terms of hallucinations, I have to say, as a lawyer, there are some famous ones that have happened in the legal industry when lawyers rely on these AI-generated reports to make opinions and present them in court to a trial. Now, in this case, police reports themselves are rarely admitted as actual evidence in a trial. They're considered hearsay to begin with, so I think that also gives it a buffer. But to the extent that there are any errors in a police report, absolutely the defense can run with that, Gadi.
So taking that a step further, let's say that there was a hallucination or an accusation of a hallucination, and a lawyer wanted to get to the root of what was going on inside of like the black box of the AI. Like, is there the possibility that, I don't know, in discovery they could say, hey, we want to see all the training, so we want to see exactly how this AI was trained to generate these police reports and open up like trillions of pages worth of discovery?
I think that is possible, but pretty unlikely. I think more likely what would happen is they would go to the actual text and they would go to the audio. So that is likely what defense attorneys will do, is they'll look at the audio and see if there are any small discrepancies. And this is why there are associates at law firms, first years and second years, who will be spending a lot of time doing things like this, Gadi.
Yeah, and those associates at law firms definitely use some ChatGPT to get through law school, I imagine. Angela Sinandela, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Gadi.
And finally, some good news to end the night. School is back in session for most universities across the country. And for those hard-working walk-ons that have been hitting football practice, hoping for a shot at some game time, well, check this out.
The strength of this team is every single individual in this room.
As college football season kicks off, there is greatness on and off the gridiron for walk-on players, guys who weren't recruited but tried out for the team.
Great job, Ronnie. I'm excited, and I'm so excited, I'm going to put you on scholarship.
The University of South Carolina, dreams coming true for linebacker Ronnie Porter and running back Bradley Dunn.
And that's why he's on scholarship, too. Hey, the other reason he's right now, he's going on scholarship today!
Across the country, other walk-ons finding out their hard work has earned them a scholarship, too.
You are now on.
These celebrations a bright light for guys like John Adams, a wide receiver at Temple, leaning on teammates and coach Stan Drayton after a tough year losing 2 loved ones.
The support that I have from this family and from these coaches, it's unbelievable. I want to change it for the world.
He, by example, by actions, showed people how to earn and get what they deserve by just putting their nose down and working their butts off.
And at Eastern Kentucky University,
Miss Crystal Smith is going to come on in.
Defensive lineman Brad Gurley shocked when his mom showed up to announce the surprise.
I am Bradley Gurley's mom, and I'm here to let you know you got a full scholarship, son.
There's Brad, overwhelmed, hugging the guys he calls brothers, then falling into the arms of his mom, Crystal, so proud to be a part of her son's special day.
He's my baby, and we have worked so hard, and I'm so proud of him. His hard work is paying off, so it just makes me happy. It's happy tears.
Happy tears. That does it for us tonight. I'm Gadi Schwartz. See you here tomorrow, but until then, stay tuned now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.